Hello and welcome to the Art of Caro. In this video I'm going to show you how I made a pair of 18th century pockets using two thrifted pillow covers. So if you're interested in that, please keep on watching.
Okay, so this is the pillowcases I'm going to be using for my 18th century pockets. As you can see here, I've already seam ripped them for perspective. Here's one of my cats. He's like a normal cat size for a medium-sized cat. So they're fairly large. I'm hoping to use as much of this like embroidered part as possible. These pillowcases I bought for 15 Swedish crowns a piece, I think, or maybe 10. One pocket out of each. They are from a store called Indiska. I don't know if they have stores in places other than Scandinavia, but they have interior decorating stuff. Happy cat. And then I bought this from the fabric store because I was like, oh yeah, I want the golden bias binding, and I bought this and I thought, great, that will work. And then I went back and I saw these two bias bindings. So it's one that's really shiny gold and sort of it's a bit thinner, and then this more sparkly, and I think, I don't know, maybe a sparkly one fits this most. This would have been fine, but I sort of had an ADD moment and like couldn't control my buying impulse. Yeah, it's fine, I can use this on other projects. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up some stuff I normally want to keep in my pocket, and I'm going to make a pattern that will be as big as possible to fit all the stuff I want to be able to fit in it, but also can fit on this fabric. And I'm also going to pull up some kind of lining fabric because this fabric, I don't know if you can see, no clothes, is it's kind of thin, and it won't hold up for a lot of weight in it. So I'm just gonna line this side because this side is already lined. So I'm going to make a pattern now and see how much of the fabric I can use. So here I'm using a full A3 sized paper to make my pattern on, and I'm just going to fold that in half and draw up half the pocket shape that I want, based on pictures from extant pockets from museums. And then I'm checking it against my leg just to make sure that it won't bump into my knee when I walk, or hang awkwardly or anything like that. Then I'm using a French curve to make the shape more even instead of my shaky lines, and I'm also going to use a regular ruler for the straight parts of the pocket. And I'm just checking with my pocketbook that it would fit, folding it back in half and carefully cutting out my piece, making sure that the paper doesn't move around, so I keep my pieces symmetrical. Then I'm writing down the seam allowance, which is 1 centimeter, and I'm trying to figure out how deep I need the pocket slit to be, and I'm using the book for that, but I think I made the slit a bit deeper just when I cut it open. Then I cut out my pattern piece out of the fabric, and I'm going to leave a bit of space around it because I noticed the fabric fraying almost immediately, and I also couldn't iron my pieces properly because of how they were sewn together with the lining. So then I separate the embroidered piece from the lining so I can use the lining to cut out my other pieces.
So this is a old duvet cover that I bought at the same time that I bought the pillow covers. The thing is, I'm not really fond of the color or the stripes, so I've been using this for mock-ups, but that means I have smaller pieces that don't really fit with the mock-ups that I want to do that takes large piece of fabric, so I'm going to be using this to line the back side.
So here I'm just cutting out the lining for the back part of the pocket, and then I'm going to move on to the ironing board and iron each piece and then put them together and iron them together, and I'm doing this because the fraying of the embroidered fabric was really bad, so I needed to deal with the large raw seams as quickly as possible to control the fraying. So here I'm basting all the layers together. It probably would have been easier to sew the pocket slit first, but since the fraying problem was so bad, I decided to do all the large seams first. And here I'm pinning on my pattern piece and then trimming off the excess fabric on the edges. And then I'm just pinning that and starting to sew it with a straight stitch all around, and then I'm going back in with a zigzag stitch to control the fraying. Then I'm pinning down my bias binding, trying to be careful and not pull at it while I'm doing this. And then I'm sewing that down. Then I'm folding over the binding and pinning it. And then I'm just basting the top of the pocket where it was fraying really bad, and then I'm moving on to basting the bias binding. And here I'm hand sewing down the back side of the bias binding using reverse whip stitches using a golden thread. And then I'm removing the basting and trimming off the excess of the bias binding.
Okay, so I've sewn both the pockets, the binding around them, and this is how much binding tape I have left, and that's a bit of a problem because I have to make a opening in the pocket right here and bind that so I can actually put stuff in the pockets, since I'm not gonna drive, or like my car is in the shop, so I'm not gonna borrow a car and drive like 40 minutes away to pick up some more bias binding, spend that much gas and time for like 1 meter on this. So I asked my mom when I saw her last if she could get me some more when she was passing by the store, and she said she would. Yeah, so I just have to wait for more material and then I can carry on with my pockets. But I'm liking how they turn out. In real life, the bias binding doesn't stand out quite as much as it does right now, and I don't think you can see it on the camera here, maybe a little. This purple is like a colder shade of purple than this purple. This is a really warm purple, and this purple on the back, it's like color shifting because the like threads that goes this way is a different color than the ones that goes across. So it's sometimes it cold tone, and sometimes it looks almost red. It's really fun. Yeah, so I'm going to get back to filming when I get more bias binding. My mom got me the bias binding that I needed for my pocket, so I'm going to do that now. I have 1 meter of this, and I'm going to bind the opening. So this is going to go on here to cover the opening, and then we get to the waistband. So I'm removing all my basting, and then I'm just marking how far down my pocket slit is going to go. And since I've already done one pocket, I'm using that to make sure it's the same on both sides. Removing more basting, and then I'm carefully cutting the 2 front layers of the pocket to make the slit. Then I'm pinning that to keep the layers together. And then I'm going to sew the same as I did around the pocket, just first a straight line around the opening. And then I'm going to go back in and zigzag that edge to keep it from fraying. And I'm also sewing the back of the opening there to keep the fraying down. And then I'm pinning down the bias binding, and I'm going to have to fiddle around a bit with the lower part of it, because I really couldn't figure out how to do it smoothly. I figured something out in the end. I'm not sure that was how I was supposed to do it, but I mean, it works, and that's the important part. But it took me a long time to figure it out. And then I'm sewing that down, and I'm just sewing on each straight line, and I'm going to sew the part where it folds over by hand later on. So this is just the straight seams. And then I'm folding it over, trying to figure out how to fold over that lower part again. Having a bit of trouble with it. It was kind of difficult. And then I'm basting that down, so it's easier for me to hand sew it. Always a lot of basting when I'm going to hand sew. I'm turning the pocket inside out so I can get at the inside of the binding. And here I'm just using a black thread because I have a lot of that, and I didn't want to waste my gold thread on the inside where it wouldn't be seen. And I'm just whip stitching that down, and then I'm very carefully, so it won't be seen, using that thread on the front to sew down that edge I hadn't been able to sew on my machine, and then continuing to whip stitch the inside of that fold and up to the rest of the pocket slits. Yeah, and then I'm removing the basting and moving on to the waistband, which is just a cotton twill tape that's 2 centimeters wide, and I'm marking the center. The waistband is twice my waist, and the center pin is marking where the center of my waist front is, and then I'm just marking out the quarter size of my waist from that center pin, and then I'm folding over the waistband and attaching the pockets. And then I'm just sewing down that fold. Careful to make sure I'm catching both sides of the fold, even when I'm going over the pockets. And here is the finished pockets, and you just tie them around the waist, and then you put the skirt over it, and then you should easily be able to reach in and put stuff in your pockets. So I'm done with the pockets, and here they are! Yay! So as you saw in the clip you just watched, you just tie them around your waist. It's not very complicated. And you can have them both underneath your outfit and on top of it. And they are made so they would look good if they're visible. Might not be for everyone, but I really like gold and purple. It's always reminded me of magic. I don't know if that's a Harry Potter thing or because of the cover of the first September Safe book, Magic. But ever since I was a small child, that's like my association with me, and it makes me really happy. So they were really easy to make, very beginner friendly. Apart from the pocket slit, the way the whole binding thing, it was really awkward making this part here, and as you can see the straight part is a bit warped, and that's because I couldn't figure out any better way to make this fold here, but it's not super visible, so I'm not gonna do anything about that. And I also had a bit of trouble with the binding in the curve here. I think I pulled at the binding a bit when I was sewing it, so as you can see the pocket sort of like doesn't lay straight, it like curves up a bit, which for these types of garments is fine. I'm going to put stuff in the pocket and it just pulls it out a bit, so it's not like bunched up like that, so it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, so it was a quick and easy and really fun project to work on. I got to sew some stuff by hand and some on my machine, and I got to make a pattern by myself. Yeah, totally recommend it if you want super big pockets that you can put your books in, and bottles of water and like everything you may need to carry with you. It's really great. So that's the end of the video. And if you enjoyed watching me make these, I would really appreciate it if you left a like, so I know. And if you're interested in what I may put up in the future, subscribe to the channel. I have a couple of projects I'm working on, and I'm not sure what's going to be published next. It all kind of depends on what mood I'm in, and I'm going to try to post videos every other week on Sundays, but that may change depending on how I feel. I don't have a lot of energy at the moment, so I may need to take longer than that, but I'm really enjoying making these videos, so I'm hoping I can keep it up. Yeah, so if you want to know when my next video comes up. You can also hit the notification bell. And I think that was all I had to say on this. May the stars shine upon your faces and have a glorious day. Thank you, and goodbye for now.